Hello! Well, we bring special tools. Yes. So these are the genuine factory 1981 Escort and Lynx engine tools. You know, these are the genuine OTC Rotunda Ford tools. And in the case, aside from the latches being a little rusty, this guy is actually in perfect shape and in complete form. So it's got everything in here. Now, what's this compatible with? So since the box says 1981, so this is compatible with all the 1.6s here in North America. So that'd be all your 81 to 85 Escorts and EXPs. That's why I got those. If you know me, you know what I got this for. And they, in general, most of these will cover the 1.9 stuff. Again, that would be 1986 to 1990. Primarily, it'll also cover a lot of the 1991 to 1996 1.9s and the 2-liter CVHs as well, found in the 1997 to 06 Focuses and Escorts. So this kit actually covers pretty much every special tool you need within the engine, assuming that you have basic wrenches at hand and, of course, torque wrenches and plastic gauge, all that other stuff. But these are all the special tools that you would need to service. Well, they say service, but honestly, you don't really need these for rebuilding those engines. Anywho, it is complete. For those paying attention, this here and this here, these two parts, or tools, they are not part of the tool set. It included this bolt. That's for the valve spring compressor. You thread this into your head if you have a 1.9, because the 1.9s and 2 liters use rocker bolts instead of rocker nuts. So you thread that in, and now you can use this on a 1.9. Otherwise, you just use the hardware that's already on your existing car to use that valve spring compressor on a 1.6. But so this is how you'd see one of these brand new kits, minus the cutouts that I had just made a few minutes ago. Now, I made the cutouts for this. This is the Sealey VS150 valve spring compressor. So it's the valve spring compressor made specifically for the Ford CVHs. They'll work on all of them, from the 1.6s to the 1.9s to the 2 liters, and those of you who are watching in other continents. That would also include your 1.1s, your 1.3s, 1.4s, 1.8s. That should cover the whole spectrum. But that is the famous tool over in Europe, and it just includes this valve spring compressor and this nut. And right now I have a bolt threaded into it. Because like I said, all the 1.6s in North America, they have rocker studs. So you simply thread on this big hefty nut. But the 1.9s, you have to thread in a bolt. And I do this because if you thread in a bolt and then thread in this nut while the bolt is being held captive in the head, you won't strip out the threads of your head. Versus only running this down into the threads of your head to try and compress the spring. That is what's going to kill your rocker bolt threads in your head. Big deal, okay? Just remember that. So, included with these, there's always this kind of sticker towards the front, and it lists what each of the tools are in each of their locations. So they simply give a part number and then a identification label, A through K. If we pull this out here, you can see that there's, on that bottom one, covers this. For that one, C is listed twice, because C includes this one and this. For whatever reason, when these are sent out. They're organized like this, but this is part of the piston pin remover, or wrist pin removal, whatever you'd like to call it. Goes together like so. They share a part number because they are a two-piece affair. So we'll put those like that. So aside from that, this identification chart is absolutely perfect and accurate. So it lists each of the tool part numbers here on the left, and then I took it upon myself to write down each of the names of the part, or each of the names of the tools next to said part. Part number, at least, sorry. Because you'll see a lot of these will actually say what part, or sorry, what tool they are. Like this one, it says piston pin tool. But this one over here, it gives a part number. It says OTC, that's the manufacturer of tools. And that's it. You don't have anything else on this guy. It doesn't say what it does, what it's for. Same with this guy. There's a part number. Doesn't say what it is, what it's for. But there are some other tools that say exactly what they're for. But there's, like I said, there's just a bunch that don't. So I wrote it all down, and then some of the words that they have on these guys are confusing. For instance, this, some of you will recognize this as the rear main oil seal installer, because that's what it is. And it may say that on the back here. So read this with me. We'll say crankshaft seal installer. Should say rear. Yep, rear crankshaft seal installer. So that's a big guy. Now we'll go to the front. And the front says upside down. It says, oh, this one's the camshaft seal installer. Put that back. Sorry. This is the front crankshaft seal installer, but you'll notice it says oil pump seal replace. That's what it's a removable installation tool. So the jargon on some of these from the get-go aren't all that perfect, but I took it upon myself to write them down, so that's not an issue whatsoever. Here's the handy thing. If you have one of these tool sets and you have the book that's for it, so like this is a 1981 Escort tool set. The book that matches this, like I said, is going to be any of the 81 to 85 Escort EXP shop manuals. I happen to have set one right here. Well, 82, so that's going to work perfectly fine. At the end of the 1.6 engine section, it will here list all the tools involving the engine servicing, engine rebuilding. So that's all the tool part numbers, and then next to those, what the tool is. So you're actually able to reference all of these, and it's pretty awesome. So the question just becomes, okay, now what do I use each of these for, or how do I go about using these? So we'll do that next. Okay, so now we're back to the front of the chapter on the engine. And it's pretty handy so when you're looking for those tools, just come down here to the bottom. It should list special service tools or something of that nature. It'll list what page it's on, and it should be the last page of the whole chapter. But that'll help you find it a little bit quicker, knowing that there's 118 pages. You're going to go to it a heck of a lot faster than assuming that there's only 52 pages, and then 60 pages later, oh, there it is. Woof. Otherwise, sadly, the only way to go about seeing which tools are used where is to actually just go through the manual as we go. But that's not really a concern, because all of you guys are going to be rebuilding your engine while going through this, not buying the thing and then not buying the tools and then figure out what to do with them. So we'll just move right along here. There's plenty of specifications here, that's whatnot. None of my tools are that. All of my tools are just removal and install tools. Okay, so here's talking about the rocker arm assembly. This is what the rocker arm is, and this is what I was talking about. So 1.6s, they have a stud and a nut, while the 1.9s have a bolt replacing the stud and the nut. So you can see that as you thread this down, that's what pushes the rocker down. And as you turn this down, it's going to try to pull threads out of the head. I mean, not every time you do this, but theoretically, every time you thread this into your aluminum head is one last time that you can thread it in reliably in the future, because it does remove X amount of aluminum every time it comes out. Alright, so we'll just keep moving along. There's more dial indicator stuff, etc., etc. Piston, ring, groove cleaners. We don't have anything like that. Here's the first tool. This is the hydraulic tap collapsing tool. It should say over here the special tool number. Unless it doesn't, that'd be interesting. That is interesting. It doesn't say what it is. So as you go through the manual, you'll see these come up in each of the photos. So you'll have to remember which one it is, and then go back and refer to it at the end of the chapter like I had shown you. But that is this tool right here. And you can see that in the photo, they slip this end right over the small tip of the rocker. And then this other end goes over the fat tip end of the rocker. And once you have it on like that, simply hold it like so, pry it down, and you will collapse your lifter in head, or actually even in engine, actually even in car. pretty handy, should you ever need to do that. And you're probably asking, when do I need to do that? Well, actually, as these engines run, you actually do need to, even though Ford doesn't say it and others don't say it, you really need to adjust each of your rockers every so often. It's wise to do it every 10 or 20,000 miles, something like that, because the life expectancy of these 1.6 cams, they're only good for 100,000, 150. I'm pretty sure that by 200,000 miles, you're not going to have hardly anything left for the lobes. But that's the deal, because all these are flat tappets and they don't have rollers. Later 1.9s fixed that in the late 80s. But all these 1.6s, they just have flat tappets, and that means that they're, every time they go up and down and every time the cam turns, those lifters are grinding away on the lobes of the cam, which means that those cams are slowly getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And because of that, every now and then you actually have to adjust these rockers, because even though the lifters have hydraulic lash adjustment to them, so they adjust the lash automatically, at some point they'll actually run out of adjustment, and then you'll hear these rockers chatter a little bit because there's just all this free play, and that's going to result in your lifter wearing out sooner and your camshaft wearing out sooner, as well as just poor performance overall, and it is to it just being noisy. So every now and then you actually have to go through in here and set all 8 of these rockers back to the 18 foot-pounds of torque, I think. Just refer to your manual. Easy stuff. We're plugging right along here. One of the tools is for the intake manifold, but it's not showing it, so we'll just keep moving until it does. Talking about pry bar for the timing belt adjuster. Not important. Here's something interesting. It's showing the rear main seal, but it's not showing the installer tool. Moving right along. Hey, here we go. We're finally at the installer tool. So this is the first one it talks about, and this one actually gives a part number. It says steel installer, and it lists the part number. So that would be, when we do our cross-reference, it is what the tool says is the oil pump, oil seal. But we just call it the front main crank seal. That's what this guy is. You put it on, run your crank bolt through it. Once this has been assembled onto your block and within your crankshaft, you now set this up against your seal, and the seal is trying to go inside this bore, and then you just run your main crank bolt through this to drive it in. And then here's the next part here. You'll see it lists another seal installer. You can see it shows the crankshaft seal retainer. So you pop out this guy from your kit, the big one. This is the rear main crankshaft seal. And again, just like the other one, you'll install this, you'll install this rear seal retainer and its gasket onto the block with the crankshaft already in place. Set this tool inside your rear main seal, and then you will use 2 of your flywheel bolts through these 2 holes and thread those into the crankshaft, and then that will run your seal in. And that kind of solves that. In honesty, those 2 tools are really only needed for when you're trying to replace those seals in the car. When you're replacing them out of the car, you really only need a round flat disc that you can set on your seal, and then just slowly tap it into place until your tool bottoms out, and then you're done. Your seal is in. You walk away. So we're just moving right along still. I know we're getting close to that intake manifold wrench. We keep seeing these intake manifolds go by. All right, piston assembly. Here we go, piston rod assembly. So here it lists the tools needed. Now, here's the sucky thing. While my kit does include this locator, I believe, it should say 6135-A1. Yep, 6135. Yep. So this guy, it installs into these 2, into the sleeve and the base, and then with a press, you put the press on this driver, this guy right here. This will drive your pin through, or a new pin in. And that's how you change out your pin. But what sucks is, obviously, this toolkit doesn't have these aforementioned sleeves and bases here. So those 2 I'll have to find somewhere. You can see that they have slightly different part numbers. So I'll have to Google those up. Maybe I can find those sometime. But it seems that those are all I'm missing to press in and out these wrist pins, which would be great, because every time I have to change pistons in these things, I have to take them over to a machine shop, because without these special tools, I have no way of doing it, and I don't have the fixture to do it. A lot of these machine shops will have a generic fixture that they made or had purchased from like Goodworks or something like that. And that fixture allows you to push that pin in and out of the piston without collapsing the piston. Should you try to use your pin or your press on your wrist pin, no matter how you secure the piston, unless you have these special tools or the fixture that I mentioned in the machine shops, you will end up oblining. You'll turn your piston into an oval, or you'll actually crack it or dent it, and then your piston's junk. It's real important when you want to take one of these, pistons out of like one of the 1.6 HOs and put it in a base model 1.6. You gotta try to save those whenever you can. Pistons are getting kind of hard to come by. But we'll keep moving forward. Hey, valve spring compressor right away. That's handy. So here's where we start using this big mamma jamma. This is actually used on a number of Fords. Comment section may disagree, but that is the case. All you have to do is you just thread your nut onto your rocker stud. You can see there's a whole bunch of bare studs here, but they threaded a nut onto that one, and then you can slide this in underneath that nut, but put this stud right between these two notches. And now you can grab it from up here, pry it down, and you'll actually compress the valve spring. It'll be pretty easy too, because you know, what, 14 inches of leverage is going to push it down pretty good. And again, it lists what it is. It says use spring compressor blank or equivalent. There are a couple of generic ones that you can use, but they got to be huge, because you can see in the photo it's going from the center of the head to the exhaust side. It's the same story, because these are Hemi heads. You have to have a really big compressor, and it will be oriented as this head sits here. You'll have the spring compressor oriented like this, and you'll get to work it in. The screw side will be where my thumb is, and then the fork side will be up where my finger is. Once you get that over the valve, you have to tighten up your screw, give a couple taps with a hammer to relieve the collets, and now your spring will actually be compressed. But it's tricky on these, because these heads are pretty big. They're Hemi heads, of all things, too, and they're actually very deep. You can see that the walls of these guys are pretty deep. So, and they're really, all the valves are really close to the walls of the cylinder head. So it's pretty hard to get inside them. Moving forward more, it talks about it again when you're going back through to install. It's the same procedure as removing. Here we go. This talks about another seal installer. This will be the camshaft seal installer. Again, nothing too crazy. You take this guy, slip it over the nose of your camshaft right here. Of course, over your new seal. And then threading in the cam bolt, the cam sprocket bolt over this guy will draw in your seal. Away you go. But like I said, if you choose to do it in the car, these tools are going to be mandatory. You'll have a really hard time installing that seal without this special installer. I just held in my hand. But if the camshaft is not in the cylinder head, then just do what I said. Again, you grab a flat steel disc that's plenty thick, and then just tap the seal into place until your steel plate is flush on the surface of the head. You'll at that point you'll be done. You'll walk away. We got another special tool here. You can see it says crankshaft pulley wrench. So this here is another actually special tool. Kind of one that's hard to get around without having in certain situations. But it's this guy, offset wrench, and on this end I'm pretty sure it's 19 millimeter. And you can say that it's offset so that it can go inside that main crank pulley. And it's preferred to be thin. This one's stamped steel, but it helps make it thin. But it's preferred to have these nice and thin, because your gap between the main pulley and the body of the car isn't much larger than about 1/4 of an inch in most occasions. So you barely have enough room for even this. So when it comes time to install this, you'll actually install it from up front by the radiator. But once you have it inside the pocket of that main pulley, that's when you turn it down, and you'll forever work on it underneath the car, underneath the engine, like it's shown here. This will be pointed down at all times whenever you're using this. And in the bottom end here, there is a half-inch drive square female receptacle, so that you can use a half-inch drive torque wrench to torque that back up to. And installation, crankshaft pulley wrench, just showing that. Here's what the torque is, but if it doesn't say it, we can find it later. Here it talks about that crankshaft front main crank seal installer that we already showed. It showed it in the oil pump section. Hey, there we go. Tighten that bolt to 74 to 90 foot-pounds. It's pretty tight. I don't know how many times this tool will be able to do that since it's 12 point and it's kind of thin steel, but hey, if it does it a couple times, that's great. You could always find with kind of thin 19 like this and bend it in the shape. Moving forward again, we actually don't have too many pages left to go through. We don't have much left at all. And I know that there's only a couple special tools left to mention here. Hey, there we go. That's one of them. Intake manifold wrench. It's not showing it, but they do want you to torque up these intake manifold nuts. And they want you to use this included wrench. And again, there's a 3/8 inch drive square end here, so you can put a torque wrench on it, because you need to torque all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 intake manifold nuts to specification. But you need the special wrench to get into the following places. Sometimes you'll need it to get at position 6 here. That is the one in the middle of the manifold on the bottom. And sometimes you'll need it for bolt, or you're always going to need it for bolt number 1, and then sometimes bolt number 6. And depending on your intake, you may need it for 3 and 2 even. But in generally, you're able to get away with a socket on 4, 2, 3, and 5, sometimes 6. But you'll always need some sort of open end wrench to get to the number 1 spot there. And that's why they have you go with this, but you need this or something like it, like a clawfoot would be fine, so that you can torque it to spec. But how important is it to torque these to specification? Because if we look at these here, torque wrench specification, it's not much. I think they only want you to put like 12 foot-pounds. I was just going to say 12. So that's not much. That's less than what you do your spark plug at. It shows doing the camshaft seal again here. Shows the rear main seal again here. That's actually a really good photo of how that one is used. And then who might be finished up here? I have a few other tools, but they're not all used, only the engine section. Here's a few special tools, but it's not what's included inside this kit. And a few more, mostly for like repairing spark plug holes. And I believe that was it. Yeah, it looks like we're coming to the end here. Yep, that was it. So the only tools, if you were plugging along with us, you'll find that the only tools that we didn't use are these 3 here. So, we'll ask, well, what are these? Well, 6254. Let's check that out, huh? 6254. This is the belt tensioner torque wrench adapter. So now, fair warning with this guy. Again, this is only going to be on North American cars, and it's only going to be on the 1.6s of certain years. Certain years, your tensioner for your accessories, or the smog pump, power steering pump, the things on the back side of the motor. But what's up front, on the front side of the motor, is your alternator and your AC compressor. That's it. Sometimes those will have this kind of bolt that locks in the tension, but pretty much on all of mine, what you have to do is you just loosen each of the bolts, stick a pry bar underneath the alternator, and then you pry that in or out, and then you set the tension, tighten up all your nuts. So it didn't show this guy in the book, and I don't know on my cars where I would end up needing it, but got it written down in case I do. I know where it is and what it does. I just don't know I just don't know where or how. The other part we got here is that 9510. And that 9510, that's idle solenoid switch. This is for one of the solenoids found on the carburetor. So it's kind of hard to say. It looks like an O2 sensor, but smaller. And that's why this tool looks like an O2 sensor remover. And then same with this guy. When we check this one out, it is the 8564. 8564 is the carb PVS valve wrench. There, so there is some sort of PVS valve, and I believe that again is another solenoid. Because that one's the other. That one's the idle shut off. I don't quite remember what this one is, or at least I don't remember how to explain it to you guys. But that's what that one is. So those two do the carburetors, but otherwise that's it. So everything in here covers pretty much everything within the engine, aside from like thread repair, ring gapping, valve guide replacement, seat inspection, things like that. You're not going to find any of those in here, but this is all the hardware for removing and installing all those set parts. So like I said, I'll do a dive, see what I can find on this piston pin stuff, and go from there. Otherwise, I think I have everything I would need within an engine. And like I said, honestly, a lot of these are just pure redundant. You don't need these three when you're rebuilding an engine. They're just handy when you're replacing a seal with the engine hanging on a stand. But geez, guys, it's 2023. If your engine is needing one of these three seals replaced, it's needing a rebuild. And since you already have it out of the car, the only one that you can replace in car is the camshaft seal. All the other ones you got to yank the engine to do. Or geez, drop the nose of the engine. But then again, you've removed 3/4 of what it takes to get the engine out. So just get it out, rebuild it, do a little bit of work to the cylinder head, and be happy with your 80 plus horsepower. That'd be great. But yeah, I know this is a little long for some people, but this is a pretty in-depth video. It's not too often you actually get to see all these factory tools, plus some of the ones that have come up and replaced them. Now, there are other special service tools for these line of cars. I'm slowly collecting them. It's kind of hard to find them. When they come up, they're all over the place as far as pricing goes. I got this whole set for $64, $65, and then the Sealey tool, that by itself was like $37, $35 at the time. They float around $40 right now. And they only come from Europe. These, all these toolboxes here in America and Canada, I should say. But I'm still looking for the one for the automatic transmission, manual transmission, and then the AC tool. There's also one for suspension and brakes. So I'm hoping to find all four of those. But in all reality, I only need a few of those. I don't think I'll need the one for AC. I only got a couple AC cars, and if I need any special tools for them, I'm just replacing those components. I'm not rebuilding compressors. I have to go out and buy replacements. That's what it comes down to. So if I need more than a multimeter to diagnose something, it's just simply getting replaced. But the transmission ones are pretty important for me. I'll be digging through a lot of manual trannies soon, and they come with a lot of press fixtures to unpress all the gears inside of those, and some of the bearings, retrieving some of the bearings, things like that. A lot of important stuff, and a lot of crazy things inside the automatic trannies of these guys. So I'll keep an eye out on those. As I collect those, I'll make videos for them. It'll be just like this, where we show you all the tools, what you need to be looking for when you're buying these, what years they're compatible with, and then what books you should be using with them, and then where to find the info about these inside your book, and then how to use your book, your factory shop manual, and your factory shop tools together in unison. So keep an eye out for those. They'll, like I said, they're kind of spendy, so it's going to be slow for me. All the transmission ones float around $100, and I think the ones for the air conditioning units are like $130 right now. It's crazy. So, like I said, we'll get there when we get there. I'm in no hurry. I'm just hoping to get these before they start disappearing. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to say so in the comments or email me directly, whatever you'd like. And you guys all have a happy holiday season.